Is the Assassin's Creed series all great, or does it have its flaws? I'd say it has flaws, but there is a lot of good. It's by no means the perfect franchise, but it's definitely one I like a lot. In this video, I want to go over the best thing about every Assassin's Creed game from Assassin's Creed 1 all the way up to Assassin's Creed Mirage. I'll also be including Liberation and Freedom Cry. And not to leave any stone unturned, I'll be making another video that tackles the not so great things. Now just a heads up though, I'm steering clear of the obvious stuff. For example, it's easy to say ezio is the best thing about Assassin's Creed 2, right? But that's a pretty basic answer. And just mentioning ancient Egypt for origins, too boring. Instead, I'm going to go for choices that are a bit more unexpected and off the beaten path. Also, shout out to Ironside Judge, as this video idea came from this video. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. Anyway, if you do enjoy this video, do consider hitting that subscribe button. And without wasting any more of your time, let's get right into it. Okay, so let's start off right where it all started with Assassin's Creed 1. Now, the common answer people may say for what the best thing is most likely that it's the first game, or maybe even Al-Mualim. But for me, the best thing about this game is the historical landmarks, and for a few reasons too. There is a lot of underrated landmarks that many people don't actually know are within this game, and their depiction is handled quite well, to be fair. For example, in Damascus, my favourite historical landmark in this game is the Umayyad Mosque. I've always been fascinated by this one, even before I got into any Assassin's Creed game. It's one of the oldest and most breathtaking mosques in the world, and has actually influenced the design of many others globally. It was built way back in 715, and its walls and dome are embellished with shimmering mosaics crafted by the Byzantine artisans. Now, considering that Damascus is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on earth, it's pretty amazing that it houses such a stunning piece of history. There is also this pretty fascinating legend about the mosque. Inside, there's a shrine with green windows dedicated to John the Baptist. It's said that his head is buried beneath it. In fact, many pilgrims press up against the windows hoping to catch visions. Another real life landmark that I love to see in this game is in the capital of Palestine, being Jerusalem, and that is the Dome of the Rock. It's one of the landmarks I actually learnt about before even playing the game, and the fact that it's showcased in this game is pretty cool to me. Of course, as indicated by its name, the dome shelters a stone that holds incredible significance in both Islam and even Judaism. I believe Jewish traditions believe that this is the location where Abraham was poised to sacrifice his son, whereas in Islamic tradition, this is where the Prophet ascended to heaven from this very spot. So yeah, I could go on and on all day about the landmarks in this game, but there is 14 other games in this video to talk about, so let's move on. Okay, so after Assassin's Creed 1 and its landmarks, we now have Assassin's Creed 2, and as I mentioned in the intro of the video, the obvious answer is of course Ezio Auditore, as this is the game that introduces us to him. But instead, I want to go with something else, and that something else is Monteregione. Now, this is one of those locations that just stands out instantly from the get-go. This tiny town, encased in its pretty large walls, really brings to life the essence of a kind of medieval Italian stronghold. Now, what I love most about it in the game is how it serves as a home base for Ezio. It's not just a location on the map. It's where we upgrade buildings, manage resources, and really get a feel for Ezio's growth and family legacy. Now, I love the idea of just being able to return to a place with more money and resources to invest, and essentially we can pretty much see it evolve from a nearly forgotten village into a thriving community. Now, what I embarrassingly found out just recently is that Monteregione is actually based on a real life place, which just blew my mind. I mean, it does look like a location that's created just for this game, and the fact that such a place exists honestly makes me just want to visit it. In fact, if any of you watching this video has been there, tell me what it's like in the comments below. I'm actually pretty curious. Anyway, Monteregione is not the only thing that I would consider the best thing about this game, as honestly the soundtrack deserves its spotlight. Whether it's the Ezio family soundtrack, the Home in Florence soundtrack, which is actually the song in the intro of the video, and also the Leonardo's Invention soundtrack. I can go on and on about the music in this game, but that's not what this video is about. So yeah, the commune of Monteregione as well as the soundtracks are the best thing about Assassin's Creed 2 for me, except Ezio of course. Okay, so moving on from Assassin's Creed 2, we now have Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Now, this is a kind of confusing one because a lot of what I can say is the best from Assassin's Creed 2 can also be said for this game. However, I've actually gone with something that might tick people off, and that's Leonardo's war machines. Now, these were 4 war machines created by, of course, Leonardo da Vinci himself in the game, and the missions involving them were honestly some of my favorite aspects of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. And yes, even the tank mission, believe it or not. Now, what I love about these is the mix of stealth and action they require. I feel like these Leonardo war machine missions really do make you plan your approach. Use stealth to move around without alerting guards, and of course once you're discovered, because let's face it, something always goes wrong, you then switch to high octane combat to sabotage the machines. There's a machine gun mission, the bomber mission, which was my personal favorite. The fact that you could fly around with an advanced version of the flying machine with a goddamn cannon attached on the wings was so cool. I remember this back when the game was released and how it was considered very innovative. There's also the tank mission, which is the most hated out of them all. I'm pretty sure most of the criticism for this comes from the fact that the 100% sync for this was borderline outrageous. I mean, not taking a single damage was pretty ridiculous, I won't lie. And then the final war machine is the naval cannon, which was a little tiny boat that carried a gun that shot fireballs. The fact that such a tiny thing can destroy big ships was pretty powerful. But hey, when people say Assassin's Creed 3 was the first game to introduce naval combat, well technically, you could say Assassin's Creed Brotherhood did. And for the final game in the Ezio trilogy, we have Assassin's Creed Revelations. Now choosing the best thing for this game was pretty hard, as I was torn between two, but ultimately I decided on the tower defense to be the greatest thing in this game. I'm just messing. Hell no, that's definitely the worst. Now jokes aside, for me it's witnessing Altair's send-off and his final moments. In fact, in terms of best moments in the entire series as a whole, this is definitely top 3, and it's not 2 or 3. Just seeing his journey come to a close in such a profound way was both emotional and incredibly satisfying. The final chapter of Altair's life is shown in a way that really does hit you in the feels, especially seeing Altair seal himself in the library of Massia, to then just seeing Ezio discovering Altair's skeletons decades later. Two legends in one room. It's a deep reflective moment that bridges a gap between two legendary assassins. Ezio standing in the same room looking at the remains of this great leader and pioneer, almost like there's a sense of passing the torch of one assassin acknowledging another across centuries. It's mostly very sad if you think about it. Altair just sat here alone and deteriorated to his death, especially considering the life he had and how unfortunate it was. But then again, it's also satisfying in a way, because before Revelations, we did not know much about Altair after Assassin's Creed 1. There is Assassin's Creed Bloodlines, and also the Secret Crusade novel, but I'm talking about a mainline entry. But speaking of Secret Crusade, if you guys have not read that book, I highly recommend it. It's probably the best book Oliver Bowden has created in regards to the franchise. Now finally, we can move on from the Ezio trilogy and delve into a new game, a new time period, and a new protagonist, and that is Assassin's Creed 3. Now out of every game mentioned in this video, this game was definitely the hardest to decide on, because there's genuinely about 3 or 4 things in this game that I love, whether it's the homestead missions, the Captain Kidd treasure missions, or even the colonial time period. But the one I've gone with is actually not related to the game itself, but instead the modern day. Now Assassin's Creed 3 to me is the game that I consider to be the peak of modern day. In fact, when I ranked every modern day in the franchise, this game came out on top, and honestly it was not close. Now brace yourself, as this section of the video might be a lengthy one. Now for me, taking a break from playing as Connor and destroying everyone in order to dive into the modern day segments was a refreshing change of pace. You know, I get why some people feel the modern day storyline interrupts the main assassin gameplay, which is what we were bought the game for, right? But there is a couple of modern day missions that really stand out to me. First up, the skyscraper mission where you're scaling the One World Trade Center in New York City. The view from the top, absolutely stunning, even for an older game. Then there's a mission at the MMA tournament in Brazil, which brought a whole different vibe with its modern setting. You see, these segments felt so different from the usual historical backdrops and Templar conflicts. Just seeing modern police officers and modern NPCs in an Assassin's Creed game was strangely thrilling. And then there's Daniel Cross. Introduced during these missions, he's a character with so much potential, especially if you're familiar with the comics. It is a shame that he ended up being so underused. You know, he did have a removed final speech from the game, and recently it got data mined so you can view it. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to check that out. It's pretty emotional stuff. And last but not least, there's Desmond's story wrapping up in such a dramatic way. In fact, it was a game changer for the entire series, and I bet Ubisoft regret doing what they did. Honestly, I've been pretty down on the modern day segments after they killed off Desmond Miles. The newer games just haven't felt the same. In Assassin's Creed Rogue, it's like they didn't even try to give us a real modern day protagonist. And by Assassin's Creed Unity and Syndicate, there was hardly any modern day content at all. But despite all the controversy, I actually love the modern day story in Assassin's Creed 3, and it's one of, if not my favorite thing about this game. Alright, so we now have the first spin-off game in this franchise, and that is Assassin's Creed Liberation. This game was kind of hard to determine one specific thing that was the best, as it's a game that, for one, is very short, and for two, just reusing almost every asset from Assassin's Creed 3. But if I had to pick something, I would go with the persona system to be the best thing about this game. Our protagonist Aveline is not just stuck with one standard set of skills or attire. In fact, she has 3 distinct personas, each with its own unique abilities and restrictions, which really spices up gameplay. First, you've got the lady persona, which is like the ultimate undercover role. Sure, she's limited in combat and cannot do the usual assassin things, but her power lies in stealth and social influence. She can bribe her way into restricted areas or charm individuals to do her bidding, all while maintaining a low profile. Then there's the assassin persona, which is your classic Assassin's Creed gameplay. Aveline in disguise is powerful with access to all the weapons, the ability to use the chain kill, and also the agility to navigate quickly through the environment. And let's not forget the slave persona, which strikes a balance between the other two. This persona allows Aveline to blend in with the crowd, carry crates, and run and climb almost as well as she can in her assassin gear. Now, I don't know the public reception regarding the persona system in this game, but for me it's definitely one of the more underrated features in this franchise, and I would not mind seeing its return in a future game. Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Now, this game took a very drastic turn compared to every other game that came before. In fact, this is the first sign of the franchise taking a step in another direction. And as for what my favorite thing is about this beautiful pirate game, that would actually have to be the fact that this game featured real pirates in history. Now, I'm sure it's obvious by now that I love the history side of this franchise, and this is no exception. I'm talking about legends like Blackbeard, Charles Vane, Benjamin Hornigold, and so many others. You see, having these iconic figures pop up not just as names in a history book, but as actual side characters you interact with really does bring the golden age of piracy to life in a way that's both educational and ridiculously fun. Take Blackbeard for example, or Edward Teach. He was not just a ruthless pirate, he was a master of branding. By sticking lit cannon fuses under his hat to look terrifying, he made sure his enemies would rather surrender than fight. But behind his fearsome image, he was actually a fairly democratic leader who treated his captives pretty decently. Now, despite the tales, like his headless body swimming around his ship, which is probably an exaggeration, Blackbeard was more strategic than savage. Assassin's Creed Black Flag shows him in a way that's kind of grounded and less intimidating, which might seem like a disappointing thing to some people. Now, that's just naming one real life pirate that's showcased in the game. I have not even talked about the likes of Anne Bonny, Mary Read, and the others that I named earlier. So yeah, whilst the setting of Black Flag might be the obvious answer for the best thing in this game, instead I went with a different direction and decided on real pirates being portrayed. I'm going to keep this one short, as I genuinely could not think of a single thing that I considered the best about Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry. Now, I'm not saying the game is bad, but coming up from playing Black Flag, I mean, what is there that's exclusive and fresh? I cannot really think of anything, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say the portrayal of how slavery was showcased is a thing that this game does quite well in. Now, I have no idea if it's accurate or not, but the way it's done in this game is quite eye-opening. So yeah, I don't really have that much to say in regards to this, as I'm not that educated on this topic. Okay, so here we are, Assassin's Creed Rogue. Now, this is a game with a completely different perspective on pretty much everything, and even though this game shares a lot of similarities to Black Flag, there's a few things that I would consider the best thing about this game. And for me, it's definitely got to be the Templar perspective, and just the fact that we're able to play the complete opposite faction. I feel like playing as a Templar is hands down one of the most refreshing twists in the entire series. You see, after so many games of siding with the Assassins, stepping into the shoes of Shay Cormac, a former assassin turned Templar, offers a whole new perspective on the age-old conflict. What's so cool about this switch is how it flips everything you thought you knew on its head. You're suddenly seeing the world through the eyes of these so-called bad guys, and it's fascinating to discover that their motives aren't as black and white as previous games might have made you to believe. The Templars honestly have their own reasons, they have their own code, and it's pretty compelling to play the game from their point of view. Just witnessing Shay's journey from disillusionment with the Assassins to his transformation into a Templar is packed with a lot of personal conflict, and also what's right and wrong. So yeah, for me it's definitely got to be the shift in perspective to a Templar. There's even just being able to see Shay get inducted into the Templars instead of what we're so used to being the Assassins, and their motto is a lot different compared to the Brotherhood. It is certainly fascinating how this game shifts the perspective to make it seem like the Assassins are actually the bad guys. You know, maybe one day in a future Assassin's Creed game we'll see a Templar turned assassin. Has that ever been done? I don't think so, right? Now, next up after Assassin's Creed Rogue, we have the first game that is a complete step up in terms of visual appeal, and that is Assassin's Creed Unity. Now, this game has a lot of aspects that I could easily say are my favourite. An obvious answer may be the setting of Paris, the parkour, even though I think the parkour in Unity is overrated, or even the black box missions. But the one I've gone with is actually the deep customization this game offers. Seriously, it's like they kicked it up massively, letting you tweak with almost everything about your character. You can customize the head, the torso, the legs, the forearms, and even the hood. did. It's not just cosmetic either. Each piece affects the stealth, the combat and parkour, which adds so much to the customization and even replay value in a way. And then there's the weapon customization. Unity lets you choose from an astronomical amount of weapons that really affects how you play. You've got long weapons, one-handed swords, and also heavier gear that can make you feel like a medieval tank. Each weapon has its own skill set to it, so you can pretty much slice through enemies with a lighter weapon or swing a massive axe. You know, thinking of it now, there really is a lot of weapons for every playstyle. I've only used around 4 or 5 of them, so I don't know what the other ones are like. You know, I'd say out of every Assassin's Creed game released, so that's Assassin's Creed 1 up until Mirage, and even the DLCs and spin-offs, it's Assassin's Creed Unity for me that has the best customization, and by far. I'd say second place would probably belong to one of the RPG games, but the choice in weaponry, armor and outfits in Unity are so well thought out, and they're not just copied and pasted. Oh yeah, and the outfits. If you don't want to customize each piece, you can just slap on an outfit to hide it all, kinda like a transmog system. Okay, so after Assassin's Creed Unity, we now have Syndicate. Now this game, even though the story is pretty weak, the villain is pretty weak, and also the combat is a bit spongy, has some great things about it. I could say the obvious, which is the Victorian London setting, which is incredibly detailed, or maybe even the Fry Twins. But the thing I've gone with is actually the World War I missions that you can easily overlook. When you first stumble into the time anomaly and find yourself in the middle of London during World War I, it's a whole shift in atmosphere that just catches you off guard, in the best way possible. I'm actually kind of surprised that this was implemented into the base game, as I'd expect a company like Ubisoft to sell this as a DLC expansion, because it does kind of feel like a mini DLC in a way. So you essentially play as Lydia Fry, Jacob's granddaughter, who's holding down the fort in 1916 London. And let me tell you, she's as strong as the Frys that came before her. You know, there's something really cool about seeing a familiar setting like London transformed by the war, zeppelins floating above, the rattle of old-timey planes, and the entire city caught up in the war effort. The missions themselves are a great mix of traditional assassin gameplay with a wartime twist into it, making for some truly memorable moments. Even though there's not a ton of cutscenes or deep story elements, the whole World War I scenario in Assassin's Creed Syndicate is a breath of fresh air. It's like a whole new game experience tucked into the main story. I wouldn't even be surprised if one day we do get that Assassin's Creed game set in a World War time period. So yeah, to me that's the best thing about this game. Well, except for the time period, but I did want to mention that. Now moving on to the first out of 3 quote-unquote RPG games. And first off we have Assassin's Creed Origins. Now this game has so many things I can say are the best. For example, there's the obvious answer, which I believe a lot of you will say, which is ancient Egypt. Or maybe even Bayek, because let's be honest, we all love Bayek, right? But I've gone with something different, and that is how diverse the cities not only look, but also feel. Honestly, each city is crafted with such distinct flair and authenticity. It feels like you're stepping into a whole new area every time you venture into a new city in this game. There is nothing copy-paste about them, which unfortunately, even though I like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I cannot say the same about. Take the city of Cyrene for example. It's like a slice of Greece right there in North Africa. With its Greek-style architecture and statues, the city pops with a vibrant Hellenic feel that's dramatically different from the rest of Egypt. Then you flip to a place like Siwa, which is this traditional isolated oasis. Siwa feels completely unique with its mud brick houses and porous side, giving you a genuine feel of an ancient Egyptian settlement. You know, I would say that Valhalla has the best looking cities in terms of graphics, Odyssey has the most areas, but it's Assassin's Creed Origins that just has the overall best. Now I just mentioned Cyrene and Siwa, but there's a lot more. For example, there's a city of Thebes that feels so alive and colourful, and then there's the biggest city in the game being Alexandria, with how stunning it looks, especially with the likes of the once famous lighthouse just towering in the distance. So yeah, the cities are definitely the best thing about this game for me. Now, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. This is a game that gets a lot of mixed reception. I feel like this is the game out of all 13 mainline entries that has the most split opinions. But putting the mixed reception aside, there's a few things I like about this game. Now just like Origins, I can easily say ancient Greece, but once again, that's just a boring answer and nobody wants to hear the same thing being said. But instead, I've gone with a more underappreciated part, and that's the cult of Cosmos. You see, these guys are so mysterious and culty, if that's even a word. The storyline involving the cult of Cosmos is not just filler either, it has an important part to the main story. Plus they're kind of like the precursor to the Templars in a way, which ties beautifully into the broader Assassin's Creed lore. Each cultist reports to a boss known as a sage, who in turn reports to their mysterious cult leader. The catch? Well, you have no idea who or where these people are. There's no HUD to guide you, no obvious tracks to follow. But honestly, that's the best part. As you wander through ancient Greece, you'll pick up clues and overhear conversations that help you zero in on these targets. Initially, you might only get vague tips like a city or an island, but gather enough intel and you can pinpoint a cultist on your minimap and start the hunt. Sometimes you might even stumble into a cultist while you're taking down an enemy fort. Like this one time, a target just waltzed right into my path with a bunch of bodyguards. Talk about convenience, right? While previous Assassin's Creed games dabbled in open world assassinations, it's Assassin's Creed Odyssey that is the first game to really nail it, all thanks to the Cult of Cosmos. And then there's the cult leader, which I won't even bother to talk about. You know, it's like watching the final season of Game of Thrones. Disappointment, that's all I can say. And last but certainly not least, I have the open world RPG games. You get it? Because Assassin's Creed Red is the next one. Anyway, what am I even saying? Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now, despite me not enjoying this game in many regards, whether it's the tedious and boring story, the side characters, the main character, and even the empty open world, there is one aspect that I will say is a standout for me, and that's honestly the combat or the brutality / Viking side of the game. If you're like me and you appreciate a game that does not shy away from the gritty aspects of its historical side, then the sheer brutality of Valhalla's combat system is a massive draw. The combat feels weighty and intense. Every swing of Eivor's axe carries the heft of a real impact. And the animations, they're just incredible. And don't even get me started on the finishers. They're pretty brutal. In fact, I don't even know how much I can show on the screen because it's considered violence and YouTube can easily demonetize the video. There's literal decapitations, weapons in necks, and you know the rest. It's clear that the developers put a lot of effort into making these moments stand out, making sure that they feel as dramatic as they look. The portrayal of Vikings in the game really complements this brutality. You see, the good thing about Valhalla is that the game does not depict Vikings as mindless barbarians. It shows their fierce and strategic side, true to the sagas and histories that inspire their legendary reputation. Unless you're a pacifist, I cannot really see how someone could dislike the animations, the finishes, and the brutality. Okay, so here we are, the latest Assassin's Creed game as of me making this video, and that's Assassin's Creed Mirage. This game's development was intended to be a return to its roots, and whether you agree on that statement, that's entirely up to you. As for what the best thing about Assassin's Creed Mirage is, I feel like the obvious answer is Baghdad, and how great it is for an Assassin's Creed game, but for me, I've gone with the stealth. You know, I made a video ranking every stealth system in the franchise, and I made that video before this game was out. And in that video, I made a prediction that Mirage would be a top 3 or 4 in terms of stealth in the series. And honestly, I like to think I got it spot on. Mirage's stealth is pretty good. The AI detection system in Assassin's Creed Valhalla had its issues, but it's massively improved in Assassin's Creed Mirage. With Mirage putting a heavy emphasis on stealth, combat isn't as straightforward as charging headlong into a battle. Instead, stealth in Mirage requires patience and careful planning. You can sneak into enemy strongholds without setting off alarms across the entire area. For instance, if your assassination attempt fails and alerts nearby guards, only those few will come after you. Not like in previous RPG style games where alerting one guard somehow alerted the entire area, which just led to a massive manhunt chasing you down. The stealth mechanics in Mirage are quite forgiving. Making a mistake does always spell disaster. If you decide to retreat from a fight, enemies will lose your trail in about 8 to 10ish seconds, allowing for very swift escapes. Now, while some people might find this too easy, it certainly facilitates quick getaway. There is also the use of stealth tools. Smoke bombs let you vanish and take down multiple guards unnoticed, throwing knives make for silent ranged attacks, and blow darts can put enemies to sleep, distracting their allies and creating new openings. So yeah, overall out of the 3 pillars being stealth, parkour and combat, it's the first one to me that stands out the most. Well, there we have it. That is the best thing about every Assassin's Creed game. Now let me know down in the comments below what your favorite thing is from each Assassin's Creed game. Or if that's too much effort, which it definitely is, name your favorite thing from any Assassin's Creed game. I'll definitely be sure to make the opposite video to this, going over the worst thing from every game, as there are some pretty questionable features in the series. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one.